Good evening. We begin tonight keeping them honest with what President Trump did on his Easter vacation. In short, he tweeted, and it's being seen as a reflection of the company he's been keeping lately, who is in his ear and who is not. So after a weekend at Mar-a-Lago with Fox's Sean Hannity and Jeanine Pirro, former Fox executive Bill Shine, immigration hardliner Stephen Miller, and oddly enough, boxing promoter Don King, he had plenty to tweet about. Attacking the news media, except for Fox News, and Sinclair Broadcast Group, the big local broadcasting chain whose anchors nationwide read a statement attacking fake stories which the president endorsed. He also attacked Amazon and his own Justice Department, putting the word justice in scare quotes. He attacked Democrats for not wanting any border between the U.S. and Mexico, in his opinion. He attacked Mexico for not enforcing its own immigration laws. And most notably, he also issued a string of tweets on the hundreds of thousands of young people known as DACA kids, the ones whose future, you'll remember, was thrown in doubt by action he himself took back in September when he rescinded the program protecting them. Now, since then, he's promised to deal with these so-called dreamers with, quote, great heart, in his words, and said this back in early January about new legislation on immigration.
There should be a bill of love. Truly, it should be a bill of love, and we can do that.
Well, in the 3 months that followed, though, the president has sought to tie legislation on their fate to funding the border wall and restrictions even on lawful immigration. In other words, the president has been kind of all over the map on this one. Right now, it seems he's in a very hardline place. He began with a tweet just yesterday morning. Border Patrol agents are not allowed to properly do their jobs at the border because of ridiculous liberal Democrat laws like catch and release. Getting more dangerous, caravans coming. Republicans must go to nuclear option to pass tough laws now. No more DACA deal. Now, in fairness, that was his second, not his first tweet of the day. The first one simply said Happy Easter. In any event, that one DACA tweet has a lot to unravel and some terms you might not be familiar with. First, keeping them honest, catch and release is not actually a law, Democrat or Republican. It's a practice, a controversial one, of releasing non-criminal undocumented immigrants on their own recognizance, in part due to a lack of detention facilities, in part, the White House claims, due to immigration law loopholes. Caravans are groups of migrants fleeing Honduras, Guatemala, and elsewhere who are making their way across Mexico together, not separately, to avoid, they say, being preyed on. The nuclear option is getting rid of the filibuster in the Senate, so the minority party, Democrats currently, could no longer block legislation. So with that out of the way, here's the next tweet, also on Easter morning. Quote, Mexico is doing very little, if not nothing, at stopping people from flowing into Mexico through their southern border and then into the U.S. They laugh at our dumb immigration laws. They must stop the big drug and people flows, or I will stop their cash cow NAFTA need wall. The president followed that a few moments later with this. These big flows of people are all trying to take advantage of DACA. They want in on the act. The president continued today with 4 more tweets on the subject. Also surrounded by kids at the White House Easter egg roll in response to a question, the president said this about DACA kids.
The Democrats have really let them down. They've really let them down. They had this great opportunity. The Democrats have really let them down. It's a shame. And now people are taking advantage of DACA, and that's a shame. It should have never happened.
Well, keeping him honest, what the president neglects to say is that his own executive action rescinding the program precipitated all of this. He also neglected to mention that he has at times signaled he's open to virtually any compromise whatsoever on immigration. Listen.
This group comes back, hopefully with an agreement. This group and others from the Senate, from the House, comes back with an agreement. I'm signing it. I mean, I will be signing it. I'm not going to say, oh, gee, I want this or I want that. I'll be signing it because I have a lot of confidence in the people in this room that you're going to come out with something really good.
So in the space of a little less than 3 months, the president has gone from being eager to sign just about anything to a Twitter rant about just about everything, and very quickly a factually inaccurate rant. Not one single new immigrant can actually take advantage of DACA, as the president claims, unless they come here by a time machine. It's, of course, limited to people who have lived here continuously since June of 2007. Mexico is taking efforts to control its southern border. That began 4 years ago. Now, you can argue it's certainly not enough, but not that it doesn't exist. And it's hard to see what ending the Senate filibuster or pulling out of the North American Free Trade Agreement, NAFTA, has to do with anything, except perhaps that they either reflect the views of his harder line advisors, certain Fox News anchors, his own harder line impulses, and or personal beefs. So sad that the Department of Justice and the FBI are slow walking or even not giving the unredacted documents requested by Congress. An embarrassment to our country, the president tweeted. He also said this. So funny to watch fake news networks among the most dishonest groups of people I have ever dealt with. criticized Sinclair Broadcasting for being biased. Sinclair is far superior to CNN and even more fake NBC, which is a total joke. The president also attacked Amazon, apparently because founder Jeff Bezos also owns the Washington Post. He also mentioned what an honor it was to host the annual Easter egg roll, but surprisingly, or perhaps thankfully, had nothing to say about the bunny. More now on a president on the attack from CNN's Pamela Brown, who joins us from the White House tonight. So, do we know why the president is in attack mode?
Well, there could be a few reasons here, Anderson. We're told by sources that he's certainly feeling the heat when it comes to immigration. As you pointed out, he spent the three-day weekend in Mar-a-Lago surrounded by a parade of allies and hardliners on immigration, particularly Judge Jeanine Pirro and Sean Hannity, who were reminding the president that, look, the midterms are coming up, and told him that basically that this could hurt his party if he can't tout success in building the border wall. That is on top of the vocal criticism from Ann Coulter that the president has been acutely aware of, that he was reminded of over the weekend. We're told that the president was already frustrated that there has been sort of a lack of progress in his view on building the border wall. He felt like he was cornered in signing the omnibus bill with very little funding for the wall. All of this was exasperated with reports on Fox News about these caravans of Central Americans trying to come to the U.S. And so as we see, this is spilling out on Twitter after he was sort of reminded of all of this over the weekend by these allies. But it isn't just on the immigration issue, as you pointed out. It's a myriad of topics the president is touching on, including Amazon and NAFTA and Mexico, his own Justice Department today. Some may say that, look, it's because he has lost some of his moderating forces in the White House, including Hope Hicks, the former communications director who left last week. And this is the first week that the president is without her by his side. She was seen as sort of a daughter to the president and someone who was a moderating voice. But even when she was here by his side, he still went through these sort of fits of fury. So I think really at the bottom line here, Anderson, is this is just the president being the president.
It's obviously not the first time, though, that the president has gone after multiple groups in just one day.
Absolutely. I mean, if you look at his Twitter feed, it appears that the primary purpose, or the way he views it primarily, is to go after people, to go after groups. It's really his outlet for him, the way that he communicates with people in the outside world, which always makes it more curious when he doesn't go after people or groups that you think he would go after, such as perhaps Vladimir Putin, such as Stormy Daniels. You know, it calls even more attention when he doesn't go after those people because of the fact that he so regularly uses it to kind of go into attack mode on issues that are top of mind for him, Anderson.
Pam Brown, appreciate it. Thanks very much, Pam. Some perspective now from CNN political commentator Ryan Lizza, as well as CNN political analyst Molly Ball. Thanks both for being with us. Ryan, I mean, should anyone be surprised at this point that the president goes down to Mar-a-Lago, hangs out with people from Fox News, and then goes on a hard right tear on Twitter, which, by the way, it seems like most people on Capitol Hill basically just ignore now?
No, I don't think we should be surprised at all. As Pamela said, this is Trump being Trump. I mean, this is someone who, in his 70s, is not going to change, and the accumulation of the staffing changes at the White House have been to take off some of the guardrails, some of the restraints that he previously had. Let's be honest; it's not like there were serious guardrails or restraints previously. And he loves this platform. He loves the fact that any thought that pops into his head can be immediately, disseminated to his people. And he's very easily worked up on certain issues, especially immigration. He's been very worked up about the omnibus bill that he claims he didn't want to sign, and that it had no funding for his number one priority, this wall. I mean, not only that, the funding that it did have said it could not be used for anything but see-through fencing. So it was very easy for him to get worked up by what's on the circulating in conservative media right now, which is dejection about his immigration policies not passing. And so this is classic Trump. We're going to be having the same conversation, Anderson, a year from now if he's assuming he's still in office. This is who he is, and these are the sort of, yeah, good.
Yeah, Molly, I mean, I wonder how how worried do you think he is about the base? I talked to Chris Ruddy from Newsmax. We're going to play that in our next hour. Who was down in Mar-a-Lago as well, who kind of poo-pooed the notion that, you know, being surrounded by folks from Fox News, that he's getting this message that he needs to be fearful of being too soft on immigration, that he's not too soft on immigration. But do you think there is truth to that? The idea that people are delivering the message to him that, you know, people in your base are starting to wonder about where you are in immigration?
Well, that's clearly the message he's getting from somewhere, and you do see it popping up here and there in conservative media, which I think is really interesting because up to this point, conservative media has really been an amen chorus for whatever it is that Trump decides to do. And if he were to decide, I thought, if he were to decide that the border wall wasn't such a good idea, they would just find a way to justify that and explain it and why it was a good thing. So it is very interesting to see conservative media holding Trump accountable for some of his promises, particularly on immigration, which was such a signature issue for him. It's hard to blame him for being frustrated. The achievements of his first year in office were achievements for the Republican Congress. They were tax cuts and judges. Those weren't the things that Trump really feels in his gut and really campaigned on, in his view, to the Trump base. And so you see him getting restless, wanting to do tariffs, wanting to do something about immigration, and, you know, as Ryan said, having fewer moderating influences around him. And, you know, I think we in Washington know that Congress doesn't do anything in even-numbered years. But if you're Joe Sixpack, that doesn't make any sense. That's stupid. Why can't the Congress keep going, even though there's an election many months from now? So I think part of that, you can't really blame Trump for being annoyed.
Yeah, Ryan, I guess the bigger question is whether the president really understands things like what DACA is. He says big flows of people are trying to get into the U.S. to, quote, get in on the act. DACA obviously doesn't apply to people who arrived after 2007. So, A, what is he talking about there? And even last week, Thursday, we were reporting on, you know, he made a speech in which he talked about, and he tweeted about this as well. He even tweeted out a picture of fencing on the border that he said is the beginning of building the wall, when in fact we went down there and it's basically just rehabbing existing fencing that was put up under the Bush administration.
Yeah, in the omnibus, there was no money for his wall. It specifically said it wasn't allowed to be built. And look, his tweets were a sort of hodgepodge of facts and fiction about immigration policy. You know, sometimes he talks about Mexico having this very, very tough immigration policy, which it actually does. I mean, in 2014, they changed the law in Mexico because of the crisis on the southern border there, and they're fairly aggressive about deporting people from Central America, something that Trump sometimes points out. Now he's sort of arguing that they're letting all these people through. And a couple points on DACA. One, of course, President Trump ended the program. It doesn't exist right now, and even if it did exist, it would not necessarily mean that anyone crossing the border would be eligible for it. And then he also made this point about if he had 51 votes in the Senate, he could pass what he wanted on immigration. That's not true either. The immigration bill that went through the Senate didn't even clear 51 votes, so that's not quite right either. So a lot of errors in his tweets over the weekend and today.
Yeah, Brian, Liz, and Molly Ball, thanks very much.